Before Dracula ever hit pop culture, Americans were already fighting their own version of vampires. Villagers were digging up graves, collecting organs from the dead, burning them, and with a disturbing twist, drinking the ashes mixed into tea or coffee. Hi, I'm Eric, and let's find out what went wrong. Back in the 1800s, tuberculosis swept through New England. It was a bacterial infection that made people pale, weak, thin, and cough up blood. Back then, they called it consumption. Medicine had no answers, and if one family member caught it, others usually followed. People started to believe that when a relative died, they weren't actually dead. They thought the dead stayed somehow alive and were feeding on the rest of the family. That was their definition of a vampire. A dead relative who secretly consumed the living, keeping their corpse unnaturally preserved. When doctors and prayers failed, people got creative with their cures, so they started digging up their most recently dead relatives, opening the bodies to check for signs of freshness. If the heart still had blood, it was burned, and the ashes were mixed into coffee or tea for sick family members to drink, hoping it would break the curse. It wasn't malice or madness, just desperate logic in a time with no cure and no understanding of disease. The most famous case happened in Exeter, Rhode Island, in 1892. The Brown family had already lost both the mother, Mary Brown, and the daughter, Mary Olive Brown, to tuberculosis. When another daughter, Mercy, died and her brother Edwin fell ill, the townspeople became convinced that one of the dead women was feeding on him from beyond the grave. Under pressure, their father, George Brown, agreed to open the graves. First, he uncovered the body of his wife. Nothing unusual, just the natural signs of decay. Then, he dug up his older daughter. Same thing. But when he finally reached Mercy's coffin, he was shocked. Her body looked fresh, her heart still had blood, and her face hadn't decomposed. In truth, it was winter, and her body had been kept in a cold crypt, but they didn't know that. The townspeople burned her heart on a nearby rock and mixed the ashes with water for Edwin to drink. Problem solved, right? Wrong! He died 2 months later. Stories like these were common at the time, but everything changed when German scientist Robert Koch identified the tuberculosis bacterium, proving once and for all that the disease was caused by infection, not the undead. The vampire theory collapsed overnight, and people finally realized that fresh corpses were often just preserved by cold weather, not supernatural forces. The cultural impact was massive. The vampire panic became one of the last major times folklore was used to explain a health crisis, and Mercy Brown's story spread so widely that it even reached Europe. When Bram Stoker began researching for his 1897 novel Dracula, records suggest he knew about the Mercy Brown case, and it likely inspired his imagery of preserved corpses and contagion. While researching this story, I kept coming back to one thought. The New England vampire panic wasn't really about monsters. It was about fear itself. Families watched their loved ones die, powerless to stop it, and turned to the only explanation they had left, that the dead were somehow responsible. It's easy to laugh now, but they were trying to protect each other in the only way they knew how, and that's what makes it haunting. That's the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories to come.